أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم رب قد آتيتني من الملك وعلمتني من تأويل الأحاديث فاطر السماوات والأرض أنت وليي في الدنيا والآخرة توفني مسلما وألحقني بالصالحين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي فالحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Once again everyone, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Today I will try to cover with you as much as I can of ayah number 101 of Surah Yusuf. This is as far as the storytelling portion of the surah concerned, it's the last ayah of the story. The ayat of the surah go on for a bit more. There's one more passage, the concluding passage, which addresses the Prophet ﷺ, in which the Prophet ﷺ is basically being taught the concluding lessons. So, often we get programmed into thinking, well, the most important thing is Surah Yusuf is the surah, or is the story rather. I want you to rethink that. I want you to think about a surah being an all-encompassing whole. And the conversation from Allah is not over. The speech from Allah is not over until the surah is over. And there's a reason He put those ayat as part of the surah. So even though the story is going to come to an end today, as we understand it, as Allah has told us, and inshallah we'll do some biblical comparisons like we've done in the past also. But the surah is far from over. And actually there's quite a bit to look at in the surah. And then see how Allah Azza wa Jalla in His wisdom sought for us to really inquire what the connection is between how He's concluding the surah and the rest of this remarkable story. In any case, this is ayah number 101. This is the concluding statement of Yusuf alayhi salam. We already saw a statement by him in ayah number 100 when he was talking to his father, and then he spoke to the rest of the family. So after raising them on the throne, they all fall into sajda. He said, Ya abati hadha ta'wilu ru'yaya min qabl. My beloved father, this is the interpretation, or this is what was behind my vision from so long ago. قَدْ جَعَلَهَا رَبِّي حَقًّا. My master has certainly made it something materialized, it's come true. وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي إِذْ أَخْرَجَنِي مِنَ السِّجْنِ. And He was good to me and has been subtle to me when He brought me out of the prison. وَجَاءَ بِكُم مِنَ الْبَدْوِ. And He brought all of you from the outskirts, from the Bedouin areas. مِنْ بَعْدِ أَنْ نَزَغَ الشَّيْطَانُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ إِخْوَتِي. Even after the devil had caused discord, and even though the devil had created a stir between myself and my brothers. Inna Rabbi latiful lima yasha. Certainly my master is subtle and delicate in whatever He wants. Innahu huwal alimul hakim. Certainly He knows everything and is all wise. That's the ayah we've already talked about in the last session. Now he turns to Allah. So the first thing that's notable about this ayah is it begins with Rabbi, my master. In other words, in the previous ayah, he talked to his father and said, this is what Allah did for me. Allah made this dream come true. And Allah has been so good to me that He brought me out of jail. And He brought all of you. So He was talking to them. And He was talking to them about Allah. And now He's turning to Allah and talking to Allah Azza wa Jal. And that there's even in these transitions in style, there's an important lesson. And one lesson we can draw certainly from all of this is that often we are in a position to talk to somebody we love about Allah, right? And you can get into the da'wah zone, or you can get into the preacher zone where you're always talking about Allah, about Allah, about Allah, about Allah, and you're not talking enough to Allah, right? So he just spoke to his family about Him, but just because you're talking about Him is not a substitute for talking to Allah Azza wa Jal. And you have to have a genuine conversation with Allah, an intimate personal conversation with Allah, not just about Him. And this is particularly important for students and activists within the realm of Islamic studies and Islamic learning and sharing and da'wah and things like that, because we're always in learning mode and we're always constantly learning and teaching. So we're talking about Allah a lot. We're reading about Him and we're talking about Him and we're writing about Him and things like that. And when you're doing that, you're not actually, even though that's valuable in and of itself, there's a place for that. But right immediately with that, corresponding with that is your and my conversation with Allah Himself. And this is also true of the audience. If you guys are listening to lectures about Allah and lectures about the Quran, about the Prophet's life, or about something that reminds you of Allah, those are discussions that your ear is taking in, that your hearts are even taking in about Allah. But what should that lead to? That should lead to you talking to Allah. A conversation with Allah should be inspired by what you've learned, right? So for both the teacher and the student, for the giver of knowledge that comes from the sacred and the recipient of the sacred knowledge, both of them should be learning about him and then also learning to talk to him, which is actually a fundamental principle of the Fatiha itself, isn't it? Because we learn something about Allah and immediately after that we talk to him. So he talks to Allah and he says, "My master, قَدْ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ." You certainly you have granted me some kingdom. Min al-mulk means some dominion, some control. Mulk can also mean governance and power. So you granted me some power. Min here means not all power, some power, that which obviously all power belongs to Allah. So some portion of power you also granted me in this life. وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِن تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. And you taught me from a part of the interpretation of all kinds of speech. So this is the phrase that we're going to concern ourselves with first. I'll share with you some things that I've come to read. At the end of this talk, I've compiled my own thoughts on these ayat in addition to the reading and discussions that I've done. So I'll share that with you towards the end. But right now I want to go through some of what I've read and I think is beneficial for all of you to know. So the first two phrases, you gave me kingdom, and you gave me some kingdom, and you taught me some interpretation of speech, right? The interesting thing that Razi brings up here is, what's the connection between these two things? Allah giving him dominion and kingdom and control, and then Allah teaching him the interpretation of all manner of speech. He says, think of it this way. Think of Yusuf alayhi salam as someone who Allah benefited from the heavens. And what's the benefit that came to him from the heavens? That's him getting the knowledge of interpreting things in a way that only Allah could teach him, like interpretation of the dreams, for example, right? But when Allah gave him certain things like control, then he not only empowered him, he's able to affect with that other people in this world. So it's as if Razi looks at it as two-directional. It's not as clean-cut, but it's two-directional. Meaning Allah has given him some gifts that he can help creation with, right? So that's his power to change the water canals, create a reservoir, make the savings for the crop so the nation can survive for several years. All of that is the power Allah gave him to make change in this world, right? So that's him serving Allah's creation. So his focus, his direction is towards the world. And he's acknowledging that I couldn't have helped people the way that I did if you didn't give me the power to do so, right? So that's the first part. But the other part is his connection with the divine, his connection with the heavens, which is this heavenly knowledge that comes to him that can only come from him. It's not through the vessel of a king. Like, for example, the king made him prime minister, right? At least in the visible world. In the unseen world, Allah made him in charge. But there were some mechanisms in the world that had to be there through which Allah was latif. Allah worked through them in subtle ways to give him that power. Allah didn't just pluck him himself with the help of some angels out of the prison and put him on a throne. There were worldly mechanisms in place. But when it comes to the interpretation of dreams, there's a direct link to Allah, right? So that's what he's saying, that Allah works through the world sometimes and gives you things that you can benefit others from, and other times Allah is helping you directly. So it's as if Yusuf alayhi salam is acknowledging the indirect intervention of Allah and his help in what he was able to accomplish for himself and for others especially. And Allah, he's acknowledging that divine connection that he has with him that no other human being actually had. It's unique to him because it's a prophecy that Allah has given him. It's a unique gift that Allah has given him that even his father acknowledged in the beginning of this entire career, that Allah will teach you the interpretation of all kinds of speech. So it's actually echoing those phrases from the very beginning. The way Razi words this is isharatun قد آتيتني من الملك إشارة إلى تعلق النفس بعالم الأجساد. It is the part where he says, you granted me some kind of dominion, is alluding to the connection of a person with the world that has physical bodies, meaning with the physical world. وعلمتني من تأويل الأحاديث إشارة إلى تعلقها بحضرة جلال الله. And him saying, you taught me from the interpretation of all kinds of speech, is alluding to his connection to the presence of Allah himself, meaning the divine direct presence. So that's Razi's note on that. Now, there's quite a bit of discussion about the word fatir, because I'm going to go through these phrases and not connect them at first. And I tried to read on and try to find for myself if others have talked about what connects the phrases of this statement of Yusuf alayhi salam. I didn't find that much. So, which is why I said I do have my own thoughts on the subject, and inshallah, I'll share that with you at the end. But we'll keep reading them phrase by phrase from now. So we've done two phrases. One, he turns to Allah and says, you gave me power. you gave me some power. And the other, he says, you taught me how to interpret all kinds of speech. Again, we're going to revisit all of them again when I'm done with this reading. Then he says, فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. One translation of that would be the creator of the skies and the earth. The creator of the skies and the earth. Let's go through the grammar of it first so our translation becomes easy. نصبه من وجهين. The fatira, for those of you who know Arabic, is a fatha on fatira. The fatha on it is for two reasons. أحدهما على الصفة لقوله رب. In the beginning he says ربي قد آتيتني من الملك. My master, you gave me kingdom. That my master who is the creator of the skies and the earth, meaning it's an adjective of master, because Rabb is munada and it's a mudaf, so it's fi mahal nasb, and therefore this is mansub, so the fatha matches. That's the technicality of it. But the point being, it's an adjective of master, as if he's saying, my master, the creator of the skies and the earth. He's connecting those two phrases together with the word fatira. ومضاف في موضع النصب والثاني يجوز أن ينصب على نداء ثان. And it could be that it's the second nasb is because he's calling on Allah again. So you have to read not the creator of the skies and the earth as a statement, but as a call. So let me explain that to you in simple English. I can say Allah, like Allah is merciful. But if I say Allah, the merciful, and I turn toward the sky and I say it like that, I'm not talking about Allah, I'm talking to Allah, right? So the fatira, the fatha of it makes it a munada, which means he's talking to Allah. That's what that means. Just like he was talking to Allah in the beginning of the ayah, when he said, my master, you gave me kingdom. My master, you taught me how to interpret speech. And now he's saying, creator of the skies and the earth. Not he is the creator of the skies and the earth. It's not an informative statement. It's a call on Allah. He's invoking Allah Azza wa Jal with that name, فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. So after he calls on him with that name, then and now that we've done that, let's look at the meaning of the word fatar, because the word fatir is different from khaliq. Many of you are familiar, even if you don't know too much Arabic, you know that the Arabic word for creator is khaliq, right? Allah is the khaliq of the samawat and the earth, the creator of the skies and the earth. And I took the liberty of translating fatir here also as creator, actually purposely to create that confusion, pun intended. Let's talk about fatar and what it means and how it's different from khalq. قال ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما ما كنت أدري معنى الفاطر حتى أحتكم إلى أعرابيان في بئر. So he says that I had no idea what fatir meant. Ibn Abbas says, I had no idea what fatir meant until I saw two Bedouins in the desert arguing. في بئر, about a well. قال أحدهما أنا فطرتها ونبتدأت حفرها. I did fatar of it. And what he means by that is I was the one who dug it up first. It's my well, I was the one who dug it up. So the word for digging up and initiating the first dig is actually futur, the same word that we're using now, fatir as-samawati wal-ard. قال أهل اللغة أصل الفطر في اللغة الشق. يقال فطر ناب البعير إذا بدا. They say, the linguists say that the origin of the word fatar actually has to do with something tearing open or coming out. Like when you dig a well, the water tears out, it comes out, right? So they used to use it, for example, for the tooth of a camel. So they say fatara nabul ba'ir, when the gums pierce and the first sign of the tooth comes out, that's actually called futur also, or fatara nabul ba'ir. So and there are lots of other excerpts. Let me actually read some of them to you. Fatara al-bi'r we did, وَالنَّاقَ حَلَبَهَا بِأَطْرَافِ أَصَابِعِهِ. Fatara al-naqa means when you're milking the camel and the first signs of milk start coming out of it. And when they start appearing, that's called futur. At-tafatir, funny enough, for boys and girls, when they get a certain age and they start getting pimples and zits on their face, those are called tafatir because they pop out. It's nasty, but that's the word. Al-futur jinsun min al-kam'i abyadu idam. It's also a kind of mushroom that kind of sprouts in the ground sometimes, like different kinds of fungus coming out. Wal-inab idha badat ru'usuhu. It's also used for grapes, plant grapevines, when the first sprout of the grape starts popping out of them, so you can appear that the fruit is starting to come out. وَالْمَعْنَى الْمِحْوَرِ, the overall, meaning revolves around one thing: خُرُوجُ الشَّيْء أَوْ نَفَاذِهِ خُرُوجُ الشَّيْء أَوْ نَفَاذُهُ أول أمره شاقا ما فوقه بالضغط أو بما له معناه كطلوع الناب. So It's basically something coming out in the very first moment. That's the common theme in all of them. Water coming out in the very first moment, the tooth popping out in the very first moment. So that's the meaning of Fatir, right? So now what does that mean in the phrase Fatir as-samawati wal ard? It means the creator of the skies and the earth from the very first moment that they were created, the early inception of the skies and the earth, the initiator of the skies and the earth. It doesn't necessarily mean creator from nothing. I would argue that the word creator from nothing in the Quran is Badi'u samawati wal ard, another name of Allah. So the unique, the innovative creator of the skies and the earth. Innovation, you know how we use the word innovation in a bad sense in Islam, like because of the hadith, the famous hadith of Rasulullah, kullu muhdathatin bid'ah. Every new invented thing is a bid'ah, meaning something that has no basis. Well, badi' can also be creativity. So the thing is, I don't want to get too philosophical, but just philosophical enough with you. If I create a building, then I didn't create it from nothing. I created it from materials that already existed, right? If I created a painting, I created it from paint and colors and a canvas that already existed. In other words, some materials were in place and I used them to put together this thing, right? So that's actually khalq. So Allah says, for example, about Adam, khalaqahu min turab. He created him from dirt. Means the ingredient, which is what? Dirt already existed, and that's one of the ingredients used to create this creation, Adam alayhi salam, right? Badi' actually suggests that there was no creation, there was no ingredients. Even the ingredients couldn't be conceptualized, and Allah Azza wa Jalla created out of nothing. That's the kun fayakun concept. That's the be and it is concept. But Fatir is kind of in between those two. How would Fatir be in between? By analogy, to help the way I wrap my mind around this, maybe that'll help you, is it's easy for me to think, here's wood, and we're going to create a table using this wood, or create a chair using this wood. Get it? So you've got the ingredient, the component, the material, you've got the tools, and here's what we're going to get as a final product. But sometimes you look at something and you don't see any ingredients. You don't see any potential. You don't see wood. You don't see nothing. And all of a sudden you get a finished product. And you never realize that this thing that was there had the potential, it had the ingredients to create something like that. So there are, within human capacity, obviously when you're cooking something, when you're building something, when you're making something, you have components and you have the framework in your mind. These are the components that are going to lead to this, right? But it's as if the unsuspected digging dirt, unsuspectedly producing water, right? Dirt and water may not have a direct relationship with each other, but it happens, right? In the same way, the gum, which doesn't look like bone, all of a sudden, what's piercing through it? A tooth is piercing through it. Perhaps what's being highlighted in the name of Allah, Fatir as-samawati wal ard. By the way, this word in the inflexive form, the intransitive form, is used on Judgment Day, إِذَا السَّمَاءٌ فَطَرَتْ, when the sky tears open. When the sky tears open. And it's referring to the initial tear in the sky. Like, we don't even know that it's full-on Judgment Day because we've just seen what? A little bit of the tear. And then that's built upon in another surah, إِذَا السَّمَاءٌ شَقَّتْ, when the sky is completely torn open. So there's this initial tear, and then there's the full-on tear. When people say that Allah has taken a son, the heavens and the earth, يَتَفَطَّرْنَا, they're about to show their first signs of a tear. That's the first tear, right? So what does that have to do with the name of Allah? The way we can conceptualize that is sometimes Allah creates a scenario, sometimes Allah creates a plan, Allah creates builds the building blocks of a person, but He uses circumstances and scenarios that you would not expect would create this. Like someone being in jail for that many years you wouldn't think that would create a great person. That would create a wise person. That would create a spiritual person. You don't associate that environment with that outcome. You understand? You don't associate slavery and child slavery with running a country. But that's the ingredient that led to that conclusion, right? So Allah was Fatir in the case of Yusuf alayhi salam, in that He took certain things, certain components, and He created something completely unexpected out of them, didn't He? So when He calls on Allah as Fatir as-samawati wal ard, by the way, I still haven't shared my thoughts with you on this yet. This is just the reading of Fatir as-samawati, what Fatir means. فاطر السماوات والأرض, the one who starts the creation off, the one who started the creation off of the skies and the earth. You know, the remarkable creator. And within Fatir, you can even imagine, now that we know that it was so much more than that. It wasn't just the heavens and earth weren't just created in their initial phases, but they were actually brought to a level of maturity so life could exist on the earth, so the planets and galaxies could be put in the place that they are, the sun could be situated where it is. All of it started from one initial tear, one initial act from Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah puts everything in place in the skies and in the earth. The one who created everything from the very humble beginnings and placed them in the right place in the skies and the earth. That's the call he makes on Allah. فاطر السماوات والأرض. Then he says, أنت وليي في الدنيا والآخرة. أنت وليي في الدنيا والآخرة. Actually, I'll go ahead and read my thoughts, my notes on wali, because it's a really interesting word. We'll come back to it now that I'm ready to read to you my thoughts on this ayah soon. Wali is one of the names of Allah, and another name that's similar to it is Mawla. So there's two names of Allah that come from the same Arabic origin, Wali and Mawla, that are used for Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay. The word wali, actually, the verb from it, wala yali or waliya yali, actually has to do with being attached to something and follow something closely. So, yalunakum min al kuffar, those that are behind you of the disbelievers, fight them. They're after you, they're not letting you go, they're following you step by step by step. Walla, interestingly, also has to do, from it, by the way, they say waliya for, you know how horses or camels have a saddle, but under the saddle they put a little cushioning so that it's a little easier for the animal itself, right? So it's got some buffer, and then it's got the saddle, and then it's got your weight on it, right? Now that thing that's underneath, then you put the saddle on it, is basically stuck to the camel. It's basically a part of him now, right? So that's actually called a waliya also. Why? Because it's stuck so close that it almost becomes a part of something. This word then started becoming used for a friend. A wali is also a friend. A wali started getting used for someone who means well for you, even among your neighbors or among close family. Why? People that stick to you and offer a layer of protection for you. They become a kind of a shield for you, a buffer for you. And they're always by your side. They become what? Wali. They become a wali, right? So that it has a fiqh connotation, but I'm talking about the linguistic interpretation. The linguistic meaning is someone who sticks by you and someone who offers a layer of protection to you. From it then became the verb that came out of it is tawalla. And tawalla means it means a word and its opposite. It actually means to turn your back from somebody. So fatawalla anhum, he turned his back away from them. But what does sticking to someone have to do with turning your back? It actually doesn't. It actually has to do with another implication of the word wala. So they say walla wajhahu shatra kada wajjahahu ilayhi wa min al-asli dallat ala al-ittijah ila shay. Actually, wala yali in its origin also has to do with the direction towards something, to direct towards something. Walla ilayhi, he turned his direction towards it. فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ, turn your faces in the direction of the sacred masjid. When the Kaaba direction was talked about, وَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. And tawalla actually means to turn your direction in the opposite direction. Same word when you flip the direction. Turn towards, turn away from. But when you turn towards something and you stick to it, then you're doing tawalli. And you're turning away from something and you're not looking back, then you're doing tawalli anhu. Tawalla ila and tawalla anhu. That's actually where the word comes from. Now, why all of this? By the way, وَالتَّوَجُّهُ إِلَى الشَّيْءِ الْتِفَاتٌ وَانْصِرَافُ إِلَيْهِ, focusing on something, turning your face towards something, and moving towards something. All of that has to do with the word waliya. Now, he says to Allah, أَنْتَ وَلِيِّي فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. You are my wali in this life and the next. You're the one that's stuck by me. You're the one that's been the invisible layer of protection. You're the one that's been my guardian, my protector in this life and in the next. He's now, it's remarkable. He's not talking to Allah about how, Ya Allah, I stuck by you this whole time. No, he's talking about how Allah stuck by him. Anta waliyyi fi dunya wal akhirah. You've been my protective friend in this life and in the next life. You know, one of my favorite ayat about the word wali is in Surah Muhammad. I think every time I get an excuse to talk about that ayah, I talk about it. So if you've heard me talk about it, it's okay, you'll get over it. But I'll talk about it again. And here's what it is. You have in Surah Al-Baqarah a distinction between wali and mawla. Wali and mawla. And there's a very interesting distinction. Wali, fa'il is an ism sifa. Ism sifa means the potential, not just someone who sticks with you, not just someone who befriends you, but has the intention to. Has the intention to. So, for example, I can be your friend and I can mean well for you, but I'm sleeping right now. I can't actually be your friend right now, but I still, in my heart, am your friend. You get it? If you need my help, you call me. I can act as a friend, but even when I don't call you, I'm still a friend to you. You understand that? So when someone carries the intent and the potential, even if that potential is not being executed, then the fa'il pattern is appropriate. So wali is appropriate for a situation in which the intent to protect someone, the desire to protect someone, and possibly even the acts of protecting someone are all there, but not necessarily being acted out. Let me give you another example of potential qualities. Let's just say someone is patient. You describe somebody as patient. Clearly not me, but you describe somebody as patient. Okay. When you describe someone as patient, it may not mean, like you say, I know this guy Abdullah, he's really patient. Abdul Hakim is very patient. Okay, great. Abdul Hakim is patient. But right now, Abdul Hakim might be in a really bad mood because he didn't get dinner. And he's not being very patient right now. Usually he's patient, but I don't know if patience is what he's doing right now. You get it? He has that quality in him, but he's asleep right now, so I can't really test his patience at the moment. When the time comes, his patience might come out. You get it? So when a quality exists inside a person, they have the potential of it, and you may or may not see it come out, but it's always there. Then when it comes to wilaya, the word would be wali. So it's the more potential form of the word that's being used here. Meaning he's telling Allah, you have always been the one that I can rely on, the constant friend that can be there all the time that I need him to be there. You're a constant, you don't go away. Okay? On the flip side is the word Mawla. Mawla is a little bit different. Mawla is not an ism sifa. You can call it jamid, you can call it mubalagha. There's other ways you can look at the word Mawla. But one thing that comes out of Mawla for sure is that it is something that's actually coming out. Like if I was in the act of protecting you, I would be a Mawla. I would be more than just a wali, I would be a Mawla. So, you know, somebody is your wali, they mean well for you, they want to protect you, but they're not there right now. They're still your wali. But somebody's your wali, and then the doorbell rang and they said, no, I'll go check. They're being your what? They're being your Mawla. You get it? So because they're living it up. In the Battle of Uhud, or in the Battle of Badr, in Surah Muhammad, Allah says about contrasting disbelievers and believers. He says, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ مَوْلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَأَنَّ الْكَافِرِينَ لَا مَوْلَى لَهُمْ. He says that's because disbelievers, that Allah is the Mawla of those who believe. Allah is the what? Mawla of those who believe. And disbelievers have no Mawla. Disbelievers have no Mawla. And in another place in Baqarah, he said, Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu walladhina kafaru awliya'uhum at-taghut. I'm not quoting the entire ayah. Allah is the wali of those who believe. So in Surah Muhammad, Allah is our Mawla. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah is our wali. So he's both to us, yes? What about the kuffar? The kuffar, Allah said, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَوْلِيَاؤُهُمُ الطَّاغُوتُ. Those who rebel against him are their awliya, they're their walis. So even the disbelievers have wali. They have more than one wali. What they don't have is a Mawla. Because whenever Allah is our wali, he automatically actually is our Mawla too. Meaning, not only does he have the potential of protecting us and covering us and meaning well for us, but actually when the time comes, every time he's executing on it. So he's our Mawla also. Now, disbelievers may have those who want to protect them and want to offer them shield and want to give them their friendship. But when the time comes, la mawla lahum, they have no mawla whatsoever. You see the epicness of these two names, wali and mawla, right? From Surah Muhammad and Surah Al-Baqarah. But anyway, coming back to this ayah, he turns to Allah and says, your goodness towards me and your desire to protect me and your protection over me is something I've always had. Anta waliyi, you are my wali in this life and in the next life. Anta waliyi fi dunya wal akhirah. Tawaffani Musliman, take me away as a Muslim. This is towards the end of his prayer. Take me away, meaning give me death as a Muslim. Some interpreted this to mean he was wishing for death immediately because everything he had to accomplish in life has been accomplished. I would strongly disagree with that opinion. We'll talk about why I would disagree with that opinion. First of all, I think it, at its face value, at least, it tends to go against the famous saying of the Prophet ﷺ, "La yatamannayanna ahadukum al-mauta." Not one of you should ever wish for death. Don't you ever dare wish for death. So the Prophet ﷺ forbade us from doing such a thing. And that's not because it was something invented in Islam, given to the Prophet ﷺ. It's always life and death, and our view of life and death, in Islam is coming from the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam and all of it. And by the way, if anyone could say, I've passed all of my tests, and now there's nothing more to accomplish, that would have been Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Ibrahim alayhi salam was told, you have passed all your tests, you have been made imam over people. Inni ja'iluka lin-nasi imama. He didn't ask for death. Right? So it would be counterintuitive to think that Yusuf alayhi salam saying, give me death as a Muslim, means he's wishing for death right now. In fact, we make almost an identical dua in Surah Al-Imran that Allah taught us, and we're definitely not wishing for death. We say, وَتَوَفَّنَا مَعَ الْأَبْرَارِ, give us death among good people. We ask, meaning when our last moments come, Ya Allah, we want to be around good people. And when our last moments come and you take us, we want to be counted among good people. Not only were we among good people when we were alive, we're counted among good people when we die. Right? Because you could be surrounded by good people and you're not good yourself. Right? So when you die, Allah puts you in a different company and you say, why am I in this group? I thought I was in that group. No, your heart was somewhere else. So we want to make sure that we die in a way that our heart belongs among the hearts of those that were good. And then he says at the end, وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ, and join me and fuse me with good people, with the righteous. So take me away as a submitter, as someone in subservience to you, and join me with righteous people. So now let's talk about some of my observations on this remarkable ayah that I've kind of tried to hold back as much as I could. Okay. The first thing to note here, in my opinion, Wallahu A'lam, is a sequence. First, you talk to, when he speaks to Allah, when he makes this declaration, you notice the last thing he's done is ask Allah for something. He said, give me death as a Muslim. That's a request from Allah. And then he said, join me among the righteous. That's also a request from Allah. But his starting point was actually, what Allah, my master, you gave me kingdom. You taught me. So his first step was to acknowledge what Allah has given him. Now, Allah has put him through a tough life. But he is looking not at what trials he went through, but rather what gifts did Allah give him. That was his first declaration to Allah. There's a way he spoke to his family. There's a way he spoke to his dad. Now there's a way he's speaking to who? Allah. And the first thing he's telling Allah Azza wa Jalla is, Ya Allah, I acknowledge that you did this and this remarkable thing for me. This is what you did for me. Number one. The second thing he does is he declares to Allah that he recognizes who Allah is. You're the creator of the skies and the earth. And then on top of that, who is he to everyone? Not just to me. Allah is Fatir as-samawati wal ard, not just for me. Allah is Fatir as-samawati wal ard for everyone. So what was the first thing? What have you done for me, Ya Rabb? Let me acknowledge what you've done for me. At least some of what you've done for me. I want to be able to verbalize it. And then I want to couple that with who you are. Before I go further, understand the connection between these two things. Ya Allah, you went out of your way to give me kingdom, yes or no? You went out of your way to choose of all of your creation to teach me how to interpret speech, yes or no? And me? How can I be worthy of such an honor when you are the creator of all of the skies and all of the earth? You are so much more magnanimous than one insignificant creation of yours, and yet you went out of your way above and beyond so much of the other creation to give me these favors. This is how special you treated me, despite who you are. Think about the comparison of, let's not talk about Allah for a moment so you can appreciate the grandness of this phrase. Think about some of you may have had a job at a big company, right? And you've got 1,000 employees, 5,000 employees. right? Somebody works in a public company, somebody works in a, Fortune 500 company or whatever, and the CEO of the company is somewhere and you're somewhere else. Like you're not on the radar because they've got national offices, then they've got regional offices, and they've got within the regional offices they've got smaller offices, then they've got managers, and you're under one of the managers, right? So you're from the hierarchy of the top of the chain, you're way down here, all the way down here. If the CEO of the company goes out of your way to send you a, hey, good job on last week's project, and I heard your son's in the hospital, I hope he's doing okay, and dinner at my house this Friday or whatever, and you start getting these personal favors from the CEO of the company among the thousands of employees, you're not going to feel a little bit daunting, like, I'm being singled out in this way? I'm being picked out? You did all of this for me? Of all the other creations? Of all the other employees, rather? Now, that's just a human being. When a human being that you think is too high treats you special, you start getting butterflies. Now understand what Yusuf alayhi salam is acknowledging. Yusuf alayhi salam is acknowledging that you, my Rabb, are the creator who makes these incredible plans for the entire skies, entire galaxies. You've made plans from how a seed will turn into a tree and a tree into the Amazon forest, and how the oceans are going to work, the entire earth and its intricate system, all of it you designed, and you took the special care to design my life the way in which you did, especially when you gave me the power to do this good in this world. And especially when you taught me how to interpret different dreams or different kinds of speech. This is an acknowledgement of how, Ya Rab, I am unworthy and you have gone out of your way to give me a favor. We're not deserving of what Allah gives us. That's his acknowledgement. Now place it. The placement of it is so important. Where is Yusuf when he's saying this? Yusuf alayhi salam is the VIP to all that ever know that entire civilization and neighboring nations. The most important person is who? Yusuf alayhi salam. The most knowledgeable person is who? Yusuf alayhi salam. The most powerful person is who? Yusuf alayhi salam. This is the moment of Yusuf's triumph, not only over Egypt, but also over his own family, yes? This is the moment to celebrate the victory of the hero who rose from the ashes, all of that stuff. And in this moment, he describes himself as so unworthy that Allah has gone so out of his way to favor him. Because at the end of the day, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا, if you count the favors of Allah, you won't be able to encompass them. Here you have his family falling into sajda. Here you have his father, finally reunited with him. Here you have all the people that wronged him brought to justice. And what does he say? No, I didn't do any of that. You gave me some kingdom. رَبِّ قَدْ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ. Here you have his interpretation saves the kingdom of Egypt, and he says, you taught me the interpretation of speech. I didn't come up with that. You did that. You allowed me the ability to interpret. And it's as if these two statements are looking back at his entire life, and he's understanding something. If you think about what these two statements mean, of all the other things that have happened in his life, if you think of these two statements, the fact that he was given power and the fact that he was given the ability to interpret, right? Now imagine if he had power without interpretation. If he had power without interpretation, he couldn't solve the nation's problems. Isn't that true? If he had interpretation without power, the nation would still be, everybody would still be struggling. Allah gave him everything he would need to do good in this world for others. To do good in this world. What does Yusuf alayhi salam understand? That one of the biggest gifts that your master can give you is the ability and the opportunity. First, the opportunity. What's the ataytana min al-mulk? That's opportunity. That's allamtani min ta'wil hadith is what? Ability. If Allah gives you the opportunity and the ability to serve him, to do something good, that is the greatest gift you can have in this life. That's the biggest gift you can give someone. Of all the things that happened in his life, he looks at the two things that he put most to use to do what? Serve. Why is that important? Because service is what's going to outlive you. The castle that he may live in right now, he won't outlive it. The food he's eating, he won't outlive it.
The clothes, he won't outlive them. The family, he won't outlive them. The easier times, he won't outlive them. A time will come he'll have to bury his father. The reunion is not everlasting. وَالْبَاقِيَاتِ الصَّالِحَاتُ خَيْرٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ ثَوَابٌ وَخَيْرٌ أَمَلًا. But the things that last are good deeds. They are better as far as your master is concerned when it comes to being paid back. And they are better in putting your hopes in them. All of his hopes of having his family reunited and all of his troubles coming to an end have already been solved. But he looks back and says, but the biggest thing you did for me is you gave me a chance to do good. And you gave me these two things so I could do good with them. You gave me the opportunity, آتيتني من الملك, and you taught me how to solve problems. وعلمتني من تأويل الحديث. On a side note, I've already talked about this in an earlier lecture, so I won't go into too much detail about it. And the first time the phrase came, interpretation of speech, many have said this means interpretation of dreams. I would say interpretation of dreams is only one small part of interpreting speech. Yusuf alayhi salam was incredibly insightful in multiple situations. He understood spoken and unspoken language. He understood all kinds of communication. He understood people's words and what may be meant behind those words in multiple circumstances. And by the way, the interpretation of dreams, the phrasing for it specifically in the surah, تَأْوِيلُ رُؤْيَايَ مِنْ قَبْلِ. This is the interpretation of my vision from before. He used the word vision. Now he's not using رُؤْيَايَ. عَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الرُّؤَى. You taught me from the interpretation of dreams or visions. No. عَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْحَدِيثِ. You taught me from the interpretation of all kinds of speech. So there's a contrast being made in his own, in ayah number 100. He didn't say, this is the interpretation of my speech. He said, my vision. And now he's using my all kinds of speech. So there's a difference. And when the king saw a dream, we saw in kuntum lirru'ya ta'burun. If you people, remember he asked his advisors to interpret the dream. He said, if you can interpret dreams, lirru'ya ta'burun, different phrase, then ta'wilul hadith. So ta'wilul hadith has its own place in the surah, which includes, because one kind of communication is dreams. But there are all other kinds of communication, and all of them were incorporated in that phrase. Ya Allah, you gave me the ability to understand all kinds of speech. And Fatir as-samawati wal ard. So one implication of that is his humility. And by the way, actually no, I'm not going there yet. Now listen to this. Much of what we read from Yusuf alayhi salam is going to be a subtle echo from sometimes his father and sometimes his great-grandfather. So some things he says, I've already told you before, for example, he said, إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْحَكِيمُ in the previous ayah. He said, Allah is the knowing, the wise. And these were the words his father used when he was a kid, when he was talking to him. إِنَّ رَبِّي عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ. Now we're going to find, I'll take you somewhere else. When Ibrahim alayhi salam abandoned his people because they wouldn't leave the worship of idols. Remember that? I'll read this passage to you from Surah Shura or Shu'ara. فَإِنَّهُمْ عَدُوٌّ لِّي إِلَّا رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Then they are all an enemy to me, meaning these false gods, except the master of all people and all nations. So first you talk about who Allah is. What did Ibrahim do? He talked about who? Allah is. Did Yusuf also talk about who Allah is? Fatir as-samawati wal ard? Okay. الذي خلقني فهو يهديني, the one who created me and then he's the one who guides me. والذي هو يطعمني ويسقيني, and he's the one who feeds me and gives me drink. وإذا مرضت فهو يشفيني, and when I get sick he's the one who cures me. والذي يميتني ثم يحييني, then he's the one who gives me death and will give me life again. والذي أطمع أن يغفر لي خطيئتي يوم الدين, and the one I hope will forgive my mistakes on the day of judgment. Who is Allah to me? What two elements did you see in Yusuf's speech? Who is Allah, and then who is Allah to me? And you find in Ibrahim's speech 2 generations ago, who is Allah and who is Allah to me? And then what do you find? Listen to this. After this declaration about who Allah is to me, Ibrahim, young Ibrahim alayhi salam said, Rabbi habli hukman wa alhiqni bis salihin. Master, give me firm wisdom and join me with good people. Alhiqni bis salihin. Literally, 2 generations later, at the culmination of this trial, Yusuf alayhi salam says, وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ, word for word, echoing the words of his father Ibrahim alayhi salam. You know, in prison he told the other inmate, this is the favor of Allah that's given to our family, my fathers, and he mentioned his father Ibrahim alayhi salam also. And What's the favor? How do we interpret the favor of Allah on this family? And by the way, we are now the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So congratulations. It doesn't matter if you're Irish or Scottish, or if you're Trinidadian, or you're from Indonesia, or you're from Bangladesh or Pakistan. It doesn't matter where you're from. You're from the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So you and I get to echo the words of our father Ibrahim alayhi salam through the words of his grandson, great-grandson. Al-hiqni bis-salihin. We'll come to that in the end, but what I wanted you to recognize is even in the way that he structured his speech with Allah and the way that Ibrahim structured his speech with Allah, there's a parallel. Isn't that incredible? Like, how observant is that he would do that? Then if you look at the previous statement, think of it this way. What did he say Allah did good for him in the previous ayah, in ayah number 100? He said, listen to this, وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي إِذْ أَخْرَجَنِي مِنَ السِّجْنِ وَجَاءَكُم مِّنَ الْبَدْوِ. Allah was good to me and he was subtle with me when he brought me out of prison and brought you all from the outskirts. Remember that? So there's two parts there. What are the two parts? He brought me out of prison and he brought you all here. And a way to summarize that is what? You gave me power. Because him coming out of prison and him rising to power is one and the same thing. It is that was actually one episode. Him coming out of prison and him rising to power are connected to each other. So he's describing the same event in a different way. When he says, you brought me to power, he's actually describing the same exact event. What event? That he brought him out of prison, which actually led to him coming to power. What does that tell you? That tells you can look at the same event in two ways. One, Allah removed the harmful from me. What's the harmful that was removed? I was brought out of prison. What's the other way you look at the same situation? Allah added good in my life. Allah empowered me with power. Basically, what Allah does, what we want from Allah in this life is two things. We want something bad to go away and something good to come our way. Isn't it? We want something bad to go away and something good to come our way. He's looking at the same exact situation and he thought about it and he realized both of those have happened in that same situation. The bad has gone away and the good has also come my way. In fact, all of you came from the Bedouin desert, or you came from the land of Canaan, the outskirts, because I had power and I had the power to bring you here. And that's the power Allah gave me. So this Ataytani min al-mulk is actually a summary of what he just said, looking at it from a different perspective. Again, another perspective. What did Allah remove? What harms? He removed the distance between me and my family. He removed me out of prison. And what's the other side of it? Allah gave me power. Both. It's as if you and I should contemplate the things Allah has done for us and not just think about how he got rid of a bad situation, but also think he replaced the bad with something even better. He added a good that didn't exist before. It's not just that he removed the bad. It's not just that he removed the negative. He added some positive on top of that. You know, if you make a chart, the negative is no longer there, you're at zero. Zero is neither negative or positive. Allah doesn't just remove the negative, he adds the positive. Inna ma'al usri yusran. Ease comes, positive comes along with the difficulty. So now that's the first thing. But then he said, min ba'di an nazagha ash-shaytanu bayni wa bayna ikhwati. In the previous ayah he said, and all of that despite the fact that even after shaitan had caused a stir between me and my brothers, right? And there's another way of looking at that. There's another way of looking at what shaitan did. Because what shaitan did and what his brothers did as a result ended up in the series of unfortunate events that were his life. And looking back at all of those events, what does he learn from that event, from all those events? Well, had those events not been there, how could I have learned the interpretation of different kinds of speech? وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِن تَأْوِيلِ الْحَدِيثِ is actually looking at what the devil did, he did. But then Allah turned it into an opportunity that couldn't have existed if the devil thought he succeeded in his plan. My brothers thought they succeeded in their plan. But Allah had a plan bigger than all of that. Allah's plan was to teach me all kinds of speech. وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِن تَأْوِيلِ الْحَدِيثِ. So he's now looking back at those same events that he's already talked about, but he's describing them from a different angle and so profoundly beautiful. So profoundly beautiful. Now he turns to Allah and says, فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Well, here a few things. I've already told you what the word fatir means. And Okay, there's a couple of other observations before I get to Fatir. He has more power than anybody else. He has more knowledge than anybody else around him right now. He's considered the most knowledgeable. He's considered the most powerful. And yet he uses the word min both times. You gave me some power, you gave me some knowledge. He understands something. Doesn't matter how much people are impressed with you. Doesn't matter how much people rely on you. He knows people rely on him. He's not going to have some fake humility. If people come to him for a question, he's not going to say, only Allah knows, I don't know the answer, go ask someone else. He's going to answer them. But after knowing and having the power that he has, he still acknowledges something. He acknowledges that that power, first of all, is only granted by Allah and is only some power. Because all power always belongs to Allah. He's never going to be impressed. It's like everybody's impressed with Yusuf's power and knowledge, and Yusuf is impressed with the power and knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal. So, آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. Now, I told you there are things he says that go back and echo the words of his father, remember? Well, you find Ibrahim alayhi salam many thousands of years ago saying the following. إني وجهت وجهي للذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا وما أنا من المشركين. I have turned my face towards the one who initiated the creation of the skies and the earth. فطر السماوات والأرض. The verb, فطر. He turns to Allah and what does he call him? فاطر السماوات والأرض. The creator of the skies and the earth. From nowhere. From invisible means. From unexpected means. Like water coming out of a well. Like a child emerging from a ditch. You are the one who did this for the skies and the earth. And now let's talk about the skies and the earth. Ibrahim alayhi salam would say the skies and the earth because his people believed that gods were in the sky. The sun was the sky. The sun was a god. The moon was a god. The Jupiter was a god, right? So he would, when he talked about Allah, he talked about the one who created the skies and the earth. وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. I am not the one who does shirk. Where is Yusuf sitting? He's sitting on the Egyptian throne. And we already know they believe in multiple gods. We already know that. We already know that he's been put in this position because of his character. But his character is not the only thing he's going to publicly declare. He's publicly declared his character. He says, I take care of guests. I'm good to people. خَيْرُ الْمُنْزِلِينَ. I'm the best of those who provide hospitality. I fulfill the scale. I'm a just ruler. He's standing by his character. And he's publicly declaring it. You can check me on my record. He's saying that. Open transparency. But he's also transparent about what he believes. Sitting on the throne. There's one thing to give a khutbah about Allah is the Fatir as-samawati wal ard in the mimbar in the masjid. It's another to sit in the throne of Egypt with all these disbelieving government officials around you. And here you're talking to Allah directly and without hesitation, you call on Allah as the creator of the skies and the earth. I don't know because I haven't studied enough Egyptology, so I don't know when this historical development occurred. And if the Hyksos, if that were the kingdom of his time, what their religious beliefs actually were. But I know for sure the pharaohs believed that they were children of the sun. And they believed that the sun was a god, Ra. They believed in the sun as a god. And Musa alayhi salam said some very politically incorrect things to their face. Rabbul Mashriqi wal Maghribi. My master is the master of the east and the west. That is an offensive thing to say because nowadays is getting complicated again, but typically in secular societies, religion is one thing and politics is another. Those are two separate things. In ancient kingdoms, religion and politics were one and the same. Rejecting the religion of the king is rejecting the constitution of the king. Not bowing down to the king's idols, the idols that he bows down to, is you defying the king himself. It's actually why the young people of the cave got in trouble. They didn't pay homage to the Greek gods that the king believed in. That's why they got in trouble. They would refuse to bow down to those idols. They were okay with the king's kingdom. They weren't okay with the king's religion. You understand? Yusuf alayhi salam is in a kingdom where he knows other religions exist. Arbabu mutafarriqatun. We've already talked about it. He brought it up in prison. These people don't believe in Allah. They don't believe in the last day. Are many gods better than one God? So they believe in multiple gods. That's their faith. And here he turns and he says, he turns to Allah and says, my master, you. And all the non-Muslim employees and security guards and advisors that are in the court are like, who's he talking to? What invisible God is he talking to? The initiator of the skies and the earth? Wait, So all the skies he's the God of all the skies and all the earth? Because the kings also believe, the pharaohs eventually developed the belief that they are the gods of the earth. Their ancestors, the sun, is the god of the sky, and they are the gods of the earth. أَلَيْسَ لِي مُلْكُ مِصْرَ? Don't I alone own the kingdom of Egypt? And not a few generations ago, you're the one who gave me kingdom. رَبِّ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ. So he says, فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, which is a political statement too. I'm not hiding my Islam. Which also tells you in between the lines that Yusuf alayhi salam made his faith publicly known and pronounced, and perhaps even started in softly inviting people to this God, not just his family. The da'wah phase is already initiated. This will become even clearer much after his death in the time of Musa, because the ancient pharaohs are going to remember the days of Yusuf when he used to call them to God. And he used to tell them that he's a prophet of God. That's also recorded in the Quran. So that now he's open about it. You see, now he's in a position. And he's going to use that position. And he's not going to say, well, this might be politically bad for my career if I talk about my faith in this position. He's still the minority. He's still, I mean, they respect him, but they can remove him at any moment. Politics is politics. That doesn't change. And by the way, the more straight you are, the more vulnerable to attack you are. The less friends you have. Because the friends, there's no honor among thieves. They become friends with each other. Crooked politicians help each other. You cover my crookedness, I'll cover yours. You understand? So easily you can imagine that Yusuf alayhi salam had many enemies in politics. Many enemies in business. So many corrupt business practices had to go away. So many corrupt politicians couldn't do what they were doing. And now he's got his own religion too, which they can try to use against him, right? But he openly declares it. فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, the creator of the skies and the earth, the initiator. And then there's the humility aspect of it. Ya Allah, I am so humbled that the way you subtly planned from the initial phases of this universe to the maturity that it's been brought to, from the futur of the human being, from dirt to where the human being has been brought, you exercise that attribute of yours in my life. You created situations out of the most unexpected circumstances. You created opportunities and skills for me. You created blessings for me in the most difficult trials, and you created them one after the other after the other. Nobody could have expected that would happen. Then there's the final comment about the skies and the earth, because what he can observe is the earth. He can't observe the skies. You could say almost as if he's saying you're the one that creates in this remarkable planned way in the unseen world of the skies, and also now I can see on the earth. So we go from the unseen down to the what? Seen. Now that we're in the scene, look at the next phrase. Anta waliyyi fid dunya. You are my protecting friend in this world. So go again. Skies, earth. You're the creator of the skies, creator of the earth, and you're my protector in this world, which is closer to the word earth, right? So those two are now coming corresponding with each other. You are the creator of this earth, and not only did you create me and this plan, you've been protecting me in it all along. And now my hope is that in that unseen world in which your plans are much bigger than this, when I am ready to go meet that unseen world and ascend up in the skies, I pray that your protection of me continues. So he says, wal akhirah. Anta waliyyi fid dunya wal akhirah. So it started in the unseen, it came to the scene, then it continues in the scene, and it returns back to the unseen in the akhirah. Anta waliyyi fid dunya wal akhirah. You are my protecting friend in this life and in the next. This is actually, as he gets closer and closer to the conclusion of this prayer, he understands something. I was not next to my father when I was a kid. I was not next to my brothers when I was a kid. I was next to no other human being, but you were always next to me. You were always my wali. And you've taught me something. People that I want to keep in my life or people that I don't want to keep in my life, that's out of my control. But one thing I know, that you will always be there. And I know that you've taught me something more important than everything in this life. I need your closeness to me in this life, and I need it even more in the next one. If you've gone so much out of your way to plan and show me mercy and show me guidance and teach me and give me these abilities, it must mean that not only do you have a plan for me in this life, you have a bigger goal for me. And that bigger goal for me is your closeness in the next life. You're my wali in the akhirah too. I know it. I just know it. Anta waliyi fi dunya wal akhirah. And since he's bringing up the akhirah, he doesn't now say, well, since you're my protecting friend in the afterlife, therefore I don't have to worry about the afterlife because I've already guaranteed it. Tawaffani Musliman, take me away as a Muslim. Take me away in submission. It's such a profound statement from him. Why? Because he understands my circumstances in this world will change. I was taken away from my family. I was taken away from a well. I was taken away from my master's house into a prison. Being taken away is a theme in his life. And he says, Ya Allah, I don't mind getting taken away for one last time, so long as one condition is met. Because every time I was taken away and I was still in surrender to you. I was still Muslim. Doesn't matter what I was taken away from and what I was taken away to, I was taken in Islam. I always surrendered to you. And now I'm asking that even if those series of adventures have come to an end, when that final transfer comes, because it may be that I'll be in this house until I die, Allah knows. But one day I have to leave this house too, and I have to move into a new house under the dirt. And when that move comes, when I'm taken away, and this time it may not be some people selling me as a slave, or security guards hauling me into a jail, or brothers dragging me into a well. It might be your angels taking me into my grave. It might be your angels that come and collect my soul and taking it up for questioning. When that day comes, when time comes for me to be taken away, and take me away as someone who was in surrender to you. Let my circumstances be whatever they are, but my heart should remain surrendered. إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلِمْ قَالَ أَسْلَمْتُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. By the way, the word Muslim is an echo from the teachings of his father, Ibrahim alayhi salam. رَبَّنَا وَجْعَلْنَا مُسْلِمَيْنِ لَكَ, make me and my children Muslim for you. وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِنَا أُمَّةً مُسْلِمَةً لَكَ, under Ismail alayhi salam, from our offspring, a nation that will be Muslim for you. إِذْ قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلِمْ قَالَ أَسْلَمْتُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Whenever his father said to him, surrender, he said, I surrender before the master of all the worlds. Muslim, Muslim, Muslim. Surrender, surrender, surrender. Take me in a state of surrender. I may not want to surrender to any other authority, but you, I remain in surrender to. It's so incredible to me that Yusuf alayhi salam is practically the person that the entire nation surrenders to. He's not in contact with any human being that doesn't surrender to him, other than the king himself. And in a sense, he's also surrendered so much his power to Yusuf alayhi salam. And here he is turning to Allah saying, take me in a state of surrender to you. Peaceful submission. And then his final prayer, وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ. Join me, fuse me together with those that are good. I see a interesting literary correlation. Remember he called Allah his wali? And wali comes from yali, which means to stick to something or to join something. Remember that? Al-hiqni, join me, another word for join me. So he says, Ya Allah, there are two kinds of joinings I need. One with you, and the other in the akhirah, the permanent joining with good people. You see, he understands something. In his life, good people came and went. And in his life, the company of people is temporary. He understands that. Life itself is temporary. Ya Allah, I do want company. I don't want to be alone, but I want to be joined with good people permanently. Right? I want to be among good people permanently. What did Allah say about Ibrahim alayhi salam? Allah said, وَلَقَدْ اصْطَفَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا. Listen to these words. He said, Allah chose him in this world. وَإِنَّهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ لَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. And in the afterlife, he's among good people. He's among salihin. And he says, Al-hiqni bis-salihin. What did Ibrahim alayhi salam say in his prayer? Rabbi habli hukman, Master give me wisdom, wa al-hiqni bis-salihin, and join me among good people. That's why Ibn Abbas and others said what he's saying here is join me in the company of my parents, my ancestors. Give me their good company. Let me be among them in the afterlife. Let me join their ranks. Al-hiqni bis-salihin also means it's talking about what's going to happen after we die. So he's saying, Ya Allah, make me so that I'm good enough to be among them. I want to be good enough to join that group. Can I get a membership to the Salihin group? Al-hiqni bis-salihin. You know, And it's also interesting that as we are coming to the close of the story as it's being told, the last thing Allah wanted us to know about Yusuf alayhi salam, a man who lived a lonely life for so much of his life, right? A life of abandonment, of isolation, and of solitude for so much of his life. And his prayer in the end, in the akhirah, is what? Give me the company of good people. Join me among good people. What did Allah say to us in His Quran? Because when somebody turns towards Allah, they suffer abandonment. That's a rule. They will be abandoned by those who can't handle their closeness to Allah. That'll happen. So what did Allah say? وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَنُدْخِلَنَّهُمْ فِي الصَّالِحِينَ Surah Al-Ankabut. He said, those of you who believe and do good deeds, those who believed and have done good deeds, we will absolutely enter them, inject them among good people, among salihin. His prayer in the end, and you contemplate that. After everything that's happened, the last word on all of it is, I just want to die when I'm in obedience to you. And I just want to go somewhere where I can be among good people forever. His description of heaven, he could have said, give me death as a Muslim, forgive my sins and enter me into heaven, right? Because those are other places in the Quran, those expressions exist. What expression did Yusuf alayhi salam choose over all others? In his personal connection with Allah, give me the company of good people. Join me among good people. What is the value of being among good people? And how do we now understand the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, Al-mar'u ma'a man yuhib? A person will be with the one they love. A person will be with the one they love. The company we have now is going to play a pretty major role on the company we're going to have in the end, because the company we have now, the one we choose to have now, is actually an indication of who we love to be around, what we love to be around. This story is remarkable because for a lot of his life, Yusuf had company that he did not want. Nobody wants company in jail. Nobody wants company in a psycho lady's house. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants the company of slave traders. Nobody wants that company. Sometimes we're not in charge of what company we keep. Those circumstances are more powerful than we are. And we're overpowered by them, and we just have to be in that situation. But then there are choices in who we make friends with, who we spend our time with. And now, in today's day and age, company can be kept off of your device, right? Your phone keeps you company because you have a virtual connection with another human being, maybe on the other side of the planet, somewhere else, and you're constantly in touch with them. Well, what kind of communication is it? What kind of connection is it? Is it something that's destroying you or helping you? He says here, Tawaffani Musliman, give me death in the state of a believer, as a Muslim, and join me among righteous people. He didn't say prophets, he said righteous people. Some say also because of his humility to Allah Azza wa Jal, that he wants to be joined among the righteous. And that's the most broad, right? Because if he says join me among the prophets, then all of his family is excluded. Everybody, only the prophets. But he wants all good people. And that's the love that prophets have, is they don't want to be treated as some special category. Their love for people in this world extends to their love for people in the next world, and they want to see all of them. Right? So, Ya Allah, make me of them, and let me see other good people too. وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ. No, my personal belief on this is that, there are billions and billions of permutations of Yusuf alayhi salam's story every day in people's lives. Somebody's living some portion of the life of Yusuf alayhi salam and going through the trial that he went through in some way or the other, right? And all of those people that are passing those trials and turning to Allah and saying Tawaffani Musliman wa alhiqni bis salihin are going to be in this Yusuf alayhi salam membership club in Jannah, where all the salihin are going to be together also, and we're going to get to meet them and say, what's your Yusuf story? What's your Yusuf story? What's your Yusuf story? And we're going to be getting to share our experiences with the other fellow believers who went through these trials. This story isn't just that of an individual. It is the story of pretty much every one of us in some way or the other. Some part of this applies. One or more part of this applies. And we get to be among those salihin. That's why the wording in the end of this is actually an invitation. What should you ask for? Tawaffani Musliman wa alhiqni bis salihin. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us a correct understanding of His book, a love of His Prophet and all of His prophets, and a love and a loyalty to His word that gives us the strength of heart that we can live through the trials of our lives with faith. And may Allah Azza wa Jal take all of us in a state that we are in fact Muslim. There is one more outstanding item that I was going to read off to you, but inshallah I'll hold that off till tomorrow. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-hakim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.